So I'll let the playwrights introduce themselves and the play they wrote. We are missing two of them, so I will do my best with either if you have impressions or whatever. I'll discuss how we're going to work this in a second. I'll let everybody introduce themselves. But Carrie Hobson is not here. Never Kaufman. But there's members of their team that work on the play, so that are here for the most part. So we can try our best to include them in the discussion. So we'll start with the gentleman in the black at the end.
I'm Randy Morris, and I wrote Pair of Aces.
And
Brian Bornstein, I wrote Simon and Garfunkel and Homophobia.
Hi, I'm Mike Brannon. I wrote The Last Chance Masquerade.
Louis Panzer, I wrote Someday. Carl J. Grasso, and I wrote that last one with his kids in Iki Pahe.
yeah. Awesome. So I just kind of borrow a format based off of Liz Lerman's process. So just adapt it a little bit for playwriting. And so we're going to talk first about your impressions of any play. So what impressed you of them? Right? Like, oh wow, this really took me to a place, or I really enjoyed the dialogue, or whatever it is. Right? So your impressions, okay? And then you'll have an opportunity to talk about what questions you might have left. Right? What any of these plays left you with any questions you can ask the playwright. And then lastly, the playwrights will get to ask the audience questions. So, impressions of any of the plays that you saw tonight. Anything you want to mention? Things that grab you, that you just kind of can't get out of your head when you go to bed tonight. Yes, Eric.
Randy, and
Yes.
I have performed in some of your plays, and you tend to go dark with some of your stuff, which I really enjoy. And your play spoke to me. I'm an anti-war advocate personally, and just watching those two women interact really just nailed some of those points that I personally feel. But just as an audience member, I was blown away by some of the dialogue. I would just like to kind of pick your brain a little bit and find out, where you were going, because it wasn't as dark as some of the stuff you've written before, but it was, I'm going to say, more educational, and that's just my feeling. I would just kind of want you to elaborate on that a little bit more, if you would.
That play is fiction, but there are parts of it that are true. The two incidents that affected the pilots, those are from anecdotes told by actual pilots of World War I. The fact that one pilot is living in a hut, the very first British ace, who was a very young man, but instead of sleeping in the barracks or the tents, he built a hut and had a little garden and played the violin. So I kind of borrowed from history and then built, because I was really struck by these two anecdotes, and I thought, how would I feel if I saw something like that? And I kind of put the pilots kind of in myself, and they have to deal with that. And then the next day, it ends, they say, see you tomorrow in the sky. Well, the next day they have to go up and do it all over again. So I don't know if that answers your questions or not, but that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that one spoke to me personally, especially with all the world events that are going on.
Yeah, what is happening now in the news was not happening when I wrote it, but I can see that.
Thanks. Other impressions? You'll have to wave your hand a little bit, because the lighting designer for tonight flipped all the lights on. Other impressions of any of the plays? Yes.
I just the Simon and Garfunkel play. I was really intrigued by the use of music, and it put me in a headspace. And I just wondered, did you start with the music, or did you start with an idea for the play or the character? How did that come about?
I started with a prompt a couple of years ago. I did a playwriting challenge where you had to write a short play every day for the month of February. One of the prompts on one of the days was fear. So I looked up phobias, and there are a lot of great phobias out there. Really cool names.
There could be a play in there.
Yeah. So I started with that, and somehow I seem to wind up inserting music in a lot of what I write. I spend a lot of time listening to music, and I've been a long time Simon and Garfunkel fan, and their music just sort of seemed to fit the themes of the play.
Thank you for that impression. Other impressions of the plays? If folks say to me anything like, oh, I really, enjoyed the potato chip humping, or, anything you want to share?
I just thought the acting, I don't know whether it's the 2-year break since we've been here or whatever, but I thought the acting was really superb. I mean, really
agree with
over
that.
the top. And
I agree with that.
Yeah, it was a good crowd and good ensemble work from everybody, and great directors willing to take these projects on and coach them to develop the characters. I'd agree as the producer. It's been nice. Steve and I are like, we watching it every night, but we're really watching it. A lot of times when you work behind the booth, it's like, whatever, and then it's like, I'm like, oh, cool, I can't wait to see what they do tonight. I agree 100%. Other impressions? I know I stole the potato chip.
Speaking of potato chip, no, I've got a question for the playwrights. Having read all the plays, I know that some of them, the characters' sex has changed since writing, and how, as a playwright, is that a trauma, or, how do you work with that?
So we only, the playwright that had the sex change kind of address that question. Anybody here? Yes, go ahead.
Mine and, Randy.
Yeah.
You go, Randy.
I obviously wrote this for 2 young men because that was the fighter pilots. But community theater, sometimes you don't get all the people you need, especially young men. And I went to the first night of auditions and auditioned myself. But I saw 2 women actually read it, and I thought, maybe this will work. And then exchanged emails with Todd and Sawyer and stuff about the difficulties of casting and stuff, and Sawyer, it was the director, I kind of left it ultimately up to him, but he made the decision to cast Lexus and Jane, and I went to see a rehearsal and was very impressed. I was very impressed tonight to see them actually in performance. I did have a concern, although I liked it and was impressed with it, I did have a concern about whether the audience would buy it. And apparently from the comments I've gotten, they did.
Well, it was kind of like a behind the scenes thing. I originally wrote as a male-female couple, official, husband and wife, and then it was just, well, we don't have kind of exactly what I told Randy, we don't have the guy character, so I'm like, well, I know this one actress that I really want to work with, so, and I looked at Evan, and Evan's like, right? What was your impression?
Well, I was Buddy Day.
Directed.
Oh, sorry, he directed my show, Bye.
Yeah, I was Buddy Day. I'm a traditionalist, but I would listen to the boss. And it's so great here. That's part of the thing too, is that, we had a very wonderful, talented pool of people and 8 directors. We all kind of fight for all of you. So we kind of have to learn to work together to build a team, and this was the best fit for the pieces we had. And I knew it kind of added a different element to it. It kind of gave us, but I liked kind of the edge it gave to our script anyway, that if we had these 2 girls at the bar, all of a sudden, our manager might look at them a little different than just a guy and a girl. So I kind of welcomed that sort of from a director perspective, and thankfully, Carl and I kind of agreed from day one kind of just to go with it and have fun with the script, because the script was zany and larger than life. But it worked well in our show, being able to kind of go outside the box. So.
I just said this, if I do go back, because mine is actually from a longer work. Yes, it is. And,
God, no.
I'm sorry. And I will change the gender, because we're beautifully seeing that. And, accents happen for a reason.
And I'll comment a little bit on that as a producer. So, you know, one of the things is that we believe at Greater Greensboro, I personally, like, you know, community theater needs to reflect the community. So, you know, if I see an audition room with 50 women and 10 men, and I have, you know, X number of roles and whatever, so yeah, we're gonna say, okay, well, we need to pull from that talent pool. But also, the way plays are selected by forum members, so we have a blind reading panel of 3 members of the Playwrights Forum that do not submit. And it's a score sheet, and on that score sheet, there's a specific amount of points given if you are open to gender or blind race casting. So, if you're a playwright, you know, it doesn't really matter what the gender is, or it doesn't matter what race it is. To me, to tell the story, then we give you a few extra points. So it's encouragement to allow playwrights to go, okay, yeah, you know, anybody can tell a story, any gender, any racial, cultural, diversity background. So, and then, yes, sometimes I lean on them and go, hey, wouldn't Rebecca be really good in this role? Because she was. So.
And not because you're standing right there.
Other impressions. Thank you, these have been awesome. Other impressions. We've already had impressions and questions, which is totally fine. Other impressions? Yeah.
I don't know if you intended for this, but the play about the phobia about being buried alive, it wasn't even so much that my husband recently lost his mom, and I had a lot of interactions with her, talking about death and stuff. That's what I brought from that play. It really made me think of her because she was larger than life, but her body didn't respond the same way her mind did. So, I didn't expect that. I really didn't. I didn't expect to live that. So thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Power of theater, yeah. Absolutely. I would, you know, I'll absolutely roll in on that. I mean, I don't know, there's probably almost everybody in this room has probably sat next to a hospice bed, and if you haven't, I hope you never have to. But I have several times, and it is tough to sit through that, but I appreciate that, because I'm like, yeah, man, you were right there with it, Ryan. It's awesome. Yeah. So, and Dave, I don't think Dave's here, but Dave and Catherine.
Yeah, I don't think either of them
They're
left.
They're awesome in that. Questions? Questions for the playwrights. What's burning in your soul?
You didn't answer the potato chip question.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is just, why?
I'll let the director and the playwright answer that.
Alright, that's on,
Or the
that's
actor.
me. Well, actually, it's more on Terry, because it became, the thing was, we had this, the thing is, there's nothing in the script. The only thing that it says in the beginning of the script is there's a giant bag of chips. Now, we didn't put it up there right away, because we figured out that if you saw it right away, you would just go crazy. But we have a giant bag of chips, and he never told us why. And he comes in and yells at them and sees chips, and the next time he's in, and we had to kind of figure out what that motion was. And as we were putting bones together and then trying to put meat on the bones, I was like, Terry, what is this big choice? I mean, what is that going to be? And we didn't know for a while. And about a week and a half ago, he's like, Evan, I think I'm going to have sex with the bag. And I'm like, all right. I said, go big.
Real big. Hence the warning on the door and in your program. I didn't see it till Monday. I was like, I should probably put a note in.
I didn't write it. It's the most brilliant thing I've ever seen in my life. Thank you, sir. Oh, wait, it comes back to me.
Yeah.
Wait,
Question.
you asked me about the bag of chips? Who was asking me about the
Yeah, why was the bag of chips?
Alright, so real quick, as quick as I can, this is sort of a true story. Not a joke. In the script, it's a lot of Spanish stuff in there because I needed to pass my Spanish class in college, and exactly over the lunch, she said that I didn't really pay attention in Spanish class. So I actually had this idea. There was a pirate in this thing. I pulled the pirate out. Yes, I did. And then I played every part. I played Drapo, I played the manager, and I think I played the girlfriend. I don't remember, something like that. And I got up on the teacher's desk, the Spanish teacher's desk, with a bag of chips, with like one of these things, and I'm like, Ikipai! And I just grabbed the chips, and I just was gonna grab it and run off with it. It exploded. A plus. Whoever's young was taking classes.
And I did just wanna mention, by the way, that Carl did have to take the pirate out for the stage play, so that it wouldn't be rated R.
Mike, oh my gosh.
On that note, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. You'll be here all week.
He was waiting for me to mention the pirate all night.
The steering wheel and I'm driving her nuts thing.
Okay, other questions? Other questions? Yes.
I liked how in, the first play someday, where, you were casting the older person as maybe not being so tech savvy and so forth, but then at the end, putting the twist, and for the younger person to get on board with, getting up to date on things.
Yeah, that was kind of the goal with that one was, we watch, you hear about all those scams, the people are giving their money, and it happens. I mean, legitimately, people lose a lot of money in savings. So that concept of, no, it really is actually a prince, and he really is coming in here, and and I liked what he did with, originally it was supposed to be a big loud helicopter or something that was coming across.
Too loud. Yeah,
Too loud, yeah. But it was an interesting way to kind of flip it around at the end. So thanks. I'm always feeling bad for folks that can't work the technology, but.
As a director, I mean, this has happened to my parents. Like they have, yeah, I paid a bunch of money to this guy from Microsoft to fix my computer. I'm like, you what? Like literally, it out of its script. Or like he clicked on something that said, hey, this thing said that you got arrested in 1992. I'm like, I was living here in 1992. There's no way I got arrested. And it's a serious thing, catfishing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like this is the joke, but like the moral of the story is like this time it really was a prince.
Yeah.
With the helicopter.
But just to give you some sense of the difference with how a director and writer, what the directors bring to the table, all that stuff with the phone cord being super long and twisting everybody up, that was not in the script, and it was brilliantly added. That's where the physicality stuff that comes in from a director, I think, really it can add a lot of light to something that you didn't even think of. So.
Well, and being an older person, I remember the phone. I remember the long cord. That was in my house, and so through all the plays, I liked how you mixed in present day messages with nostalgia.
Any other questions or impressions? Yes.
Yeah, just about the Last Chance Masquerade, I couldn't help but notice that it made a good use of projector off the back, which wasn't something I saw a lot of the other plays. Speaking of lights, the reference to last bit there. Was that a personal writing decision, or was that more the director? Who had more say with the visual aspect that was involved? Yeah, so that was something that was written into the script, basically. Sometimes a playwright will write something without really stressing too much about how a director's supposed to pull it off. In this case, there was a scene that was there where Bobby, who's this 40-something-year-old ballerina, spins around and suddenly transforms into a 18-year-old prima ballerina, whatever, and I just wrote in the script as, and suddenly through a subtle use of lighting, she switches. And then you get the play produced by a black box theater and amateur cast, and you hand it over to a director, and they somehow have to come up with some way to make that happen. And Susan Proctor, who I think is here somewhere, there she is. Can we quick round of applause for Susan? You did a great job. Love the director. But Susan's the one that they put the projector in previously into the hire for some things. She worked with Todd. You actually created, I think, all those videos yourself. So, I mean, just did a great mixing in the music and everything else. So, as a playwright, I wrote the basic moment, but the director is the one that really made that come to life. So, 99% credit, Susan. Great job.
Yeah, one of the first things I try to emphasize to my directors is, once they get the play that they're going to direct for evening short plays, like, first thing is call us a playwright. That's the difference between working with a living playwright and a dead playwright, right? You can't call up Shakespeare or Ibsen or whatever, right? So you see wildly different interpretations of those types of texts, but I'm like, you've got a living person that you need to work with and get on, no pun intended, literally the same page, and bring ideas to the table. And I also tell all my directors to get used to the word no. Yeah, it is not your job to change a script into something that you want it to be, right? It's your job to tell the story, right? And work with the playwright. So there was a lot of great collaborations, a lot of new ideas that weren't in these original scripts, but so it was fun to see those teams and those minds kind of work together in that way. So you get projections where you get, potato chip antics.
Phone chords.
Phone chords.
Yeah. Phone chords, potato chip antics.
It's really neat to see what different people bring to the table for that too, because that play, Last Chance Masquerade, was part of a show we were putting up in 20, right when COVID happened. And it went up, and I was directing Masquerade last time, and I'd gotten everything on its feet, but I was so grappled with that image of what to do with the ballerina, and didn't have the tech savvy that Susan had. And so I ended up calling our master movement guy and be like, hey Todd, what can we do with that? But it was so wild to then see what Susan did with it, because she took the thing that was I was having such problems with it as a director and made it like such a great strong point. And so that's really cool about in this community, is getting to see like all the different talented people, and like it's amazing what they all bring to the table.
Yeah, even when he worked for in the projection and the stars were on his face, I mean, I'm sure that was deliberate. He got right in I mean, that was, for sitting where we were, it really blended the whole thing. It was awesome.
It was very deliberate.
Oh, yeah.
Stood on a ladder for 2 hours. I was like, Trump, you weren't gonna get in that thing. Like, Bobby, get in there.
Right there, right there.
Awesome. Okay, playwrights, what questions do you have for your audience?
You guys have fun?
Yeah.
Any questions? Anything that you're dying to know from a living audience?
Versus a dead.
Yeah, actually, the only question I would just have is, there were 4 characters in the Last Chance Masquerade. So what was like people's favorites? Just like say it out loud. Who's your favorite character? You can say the
Ballerina.
The ballerina, astronaut, president, genie. So what was your favorite?
Astronaut.
Ballerina.
I would say Jeannie.
Genie.
Okay, good. Yeah, I wanted to see kind of a mix of that. Yeah,
I thought
no
Brittany
one
did
said
awesome
yeah.
with that. She was
Well,
just,
yeah.
sly and
There are a lot of people.
she was very like just present, not over the top. It worked really well.
Yeah, she did
like
really
really
well.
built that character.
She's not here, is she? Okay, we talked to her. She's great.
Yeah. And I told her that personally. I was like, that's awesome. You're great.
That- That show was
Other-
actually, that skit was actually like retro as well. You know, it brought me back, back when I was a kid watching TV with I Love Jeannie and,
Oh, yeah.
those kinds of things.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So, I know Dick and Jeannie the names were probably true to the person, but was Terrell and Bobby, where did that come from?
Yeah, it probably doesn't escape most people's attention if you look at the program that Bobby Liggett played Bobby
Yeah.
in the play. The play originally, the character of Bobby was a character that Bobby came up with about 3 EOSPs before.
Okay.
And so, she came with the idea of a woman in her 40s showing up in a ballet class in a tutu and looking ridiculous. And Clint Fest actually wrote that play, and I thought it was still a good character, and I wanted to write it, so I said I can include her in something. Terrell is based on my friend Terrell Brown, who was supposed to be here tonight, but will hopefully be here tomorrow, who wanted to be an astronaut. And Dick was named because I really wanted to make that joke.
Right. Dick and Jeannie were a joke, so that's why I
Yeah,
wanted
the
to
genie,
know.
yeah, exactly, and the genie was named because I had to
Right,
get the name of
right.
the character.
So I didn't know Terrell and Bobby were.
No, but they're actually named after the people that they actually were based on, which is fun.
Cool. Any other questions for the
I'd kind of like to, Eric, told me how the play affected him. I'd kind of like to hear some more other reactions to the play.
Anything
What did
specific?
you, yes, what did you get out of the characters and how they responded to their experience?
As someone who's read a lot about, you know, the flags of our fathers and Unbroken and a lot of those war stories, and had a whole military family and had pilots.
And as a pilot yourself.
You are a pilot.
Not me,
That's
but
true.
pilots that were actually in the military. You know, a lot of that time period, when they came back from war, didn't talk about, you know, their experiences and stuff, and you just kinda hit home of maybe why, you know.
Well, I did have the one, Bert say, we're not supposed to talk about this or something.
Right, but just, you know, it kinda, you filled in the detail of the trauma, you know, that they go through, and to which, you know, once you are put in that situation for years on end, or even months on end, and then come back to a world that's just buzzing and living, kinda like pandemic and not pandemic, all of a sudden you're thrown into this world, you know, maybe why they didn't talk about it and all that, so I thought that was, you know, a really good remembrance.
I also, the thing that struck me when they were having that conversation is just how, like, we aren't, like, as human beings, we are not meant to take that level of destruction of other human beings. Like, it's physically, mentally anguishing. Like, I'm a pacifist and I hate war anyways, but I love the idea that, you know, so many depictions of war that we have are, like, glory and, you know, and honor, and even in our country, we're all about, like, praising the military service, when really what we should be saying is, God, you did these horrible things on our behalf, and now you walk away with it, and you keep it with you, and, you know, no, like, us supporting the VA or whatever is really gonna take that away. So it just kinda struck me, right, like, we're adding another $51 billion into the military budget to make more people broken.
Well, the other thing is, it's a visceral reaction when you're in those kinds of planes where you're getting the splatter over time. They've tried to do as much as they can to keep soldiers detached from that, so it's like a video game. So now it's less like you're taking a person out and more like you're taking a blip out. And they actually consciously train people, because it used to be, even in the Civil War and stuff like that, where they went into Gettysburg and found all these guns that they had never even shot, or they shot over somebody's head because they just couldn't take a life like that. So it's interesting how they have to try to mold people to turn them into somebody that can even do it. So interesting.
And just if I could add on one quick point, for a playwright that's not here, the Game of Chance, which is written by Bill Cisna.
Yeah.
That's a play, the Vietnam War lottery play that was there earlier today. Again, in terms of speaking against the war and speaking to what a lot of people were going through during that time period, I thought also another great example of the kind of things you guys are talking about. So I wanted to give a shout out to Bill for recording this.
Thank you.
And say, thank you, Bill.
Terry.
One more thing for Randy, I was familiar with the play, and it being done with two women took, for me, it made a big change, because being familiar with it, there was a lot of machismo in there, you know, talking about the drinking and avoiding talking about the killing for a while before they got around to it, and it just seemed to have a different feel when it was two women doing this, and I liked that different aspect.
Yeah.
One
that was really good.
One piece of feedback for that writer maybe, is that those of us who were born after the war, had no idea how the lottery worked. So actually, I was really distracted by the emotional impact of, like, what it meant to be a 003. I had no idea. I just had to assume. So maybe just tiny writing changes to make it more clear of the stakes.
Yeah, Evan mentioned before that he was directing Last Chance Masquerade last time we were going to do this before the pandemic hit. I was directing Game of Chance originally before the pandemic hit. And the original draft of the play did actually go into more detail about the lottery, and I think that kind of dragged down the play a little bit. So I think Bill was trying to go ahead and make that clear while still make it. So I'll pass that note along, but I think that was the original intent, was just have the exposition be as light as possible so we can get to the human side of the drama. But I think from an educational standpoint especially, that might be a good thing to add in a little bit more.
Okay, well, playwrights in the audience. I just want to say thank you to one woman sitting in the audience, Susan Proctor, who became our last minute seamstress, costumer.
Thank you.
And pro bono house manager for me as well. So thank you, Susan, very much. I appreciate that, all the work you put in this week. Folks, again, I can't emphasize enough, thank you for coming out and supporting living playwrights in Newark and Greensboro. You too can be part of this crew. We take everybody and turn you into a theater person. So if you're interested in it, if you have questions about the Playwrights Forum and what we do, come see me or come to a meeting.